All right, we have a very special guest on the show today. She is the host of the Grace Curley Show. Grace Curley, welcome. How are you?
I am great, Darvio. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It is a complete honor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being generous with your platform and for having me on your show several times as well. I want to tell you that first before we get started. I really appreciate that.
Well, Darvio, every time you're on my show, I get flooded with messages of people saying, where can I find this man? And he's, speaking so much truth. So you are always a hit. You are always welcome on my show anytime, anywhere.
I appreciate that. So let's jump into that speech from the president that the president gave on Thursday. I am going to go into detail my thoughts a little bit later. But first, what were your thoughts on Joe Biden's speech?
I think my initial thoughts were just who decided on the red lights. I mean, I know it sounds basic, but I think that was really, when you think about anything, I mean, the optics are usually what hits first. And the optics of this speech were just horrible. He looked like some sort of supervillain. He was up there ranting and raving. And I think he mentioned MAGA Republicans about 13 times.
Yeah.
And what it really said to me, Darvio, beyond anything else, is, and I was trying to think of this and I was trying to put it into words the other day, Donald Trump, and you can argue that he was divisive, and, people say that all the time, and maybe he was, maybe some of his tweets weren't great and all that stuff, but he tended to attack individuals and, people that had wronged him in his mind. He didn't tend to go after large swaths of the American population. And the fact that Joe Biden did that last night, what it says to me is that he thinks these people, these MAGA Republicans, are unwinnable. He has given up on the idea of winning those people over with accomplishments or anything he's done right. And he's kind of relinquished to the fact that, listen, I'm only going to be able to vilify these people. I'm never going to get their votes. And Biden decided to attack this entire, group of people in the United States of America. And what that says to me is that he no longer thinks that group of people is winnable. He no longer thinks he's going to be able to persuade those people to vote for him based off all of the disasters that have happened under his administration. So he's kind of giving up on this idea of winning people over with your accomplishments or your platform or, your ideas. And instead he has decided just to go after people and just to kind of cast aside this huge group of people in the United States. And you can tell how bad the speech was by the fact that then he tried to backtrack today with Peter Ducey and say, well, no, I didn't, I don't think that the MAGA Republicans or Trump supporters are a threat to our democracy. Well, your speech really did give that impression. You said MAGA Republicans over and over and over again. And I just can't, the part of it that I know how bad Joe Biden is, and I know he's a terrible politician and he always has been, but it's the fact that he has all of these people around him and they let him go out there and make this speech that truly blows my mind.
And, I think you make so many great points. And one of the things to me, one of the things that was so offensive, I think, about that speech is, like, to me, it has very little to do with Trump. It's about the fact that you denigrated half of the country. And for someone who talks a lot about unity and wanting to turn the temperature down, which is what he was elected to do, for him to do that demagogic speech, attacking half of the country, that to me, okay, you don't like Trump, that's fine. There's a lot of things to not like about Donald Trump, but to attack half of the country, like that's the thing to me that was the most offensive.
Yeah, and it's a really true point, Darvio, but I think what's really happening here is I don't think anything's changed about Joe Biden. I think the mask has slipped. I think that the Democrats are kind of losing their subtlety as far as how they really feel about anyone who questions their transformation of America, their fundamental transformation of this country. And they're not trying to win over people who are in the middle of the road. What they're trying to do is they're trying to put Trump back on the ballot. And it makes sense why. Because for a long time, remember, Biden wouldn't even mention Trump. It was always the former guy, and they would never mention MAGA. And then once they realized, wow, we've screwed up every single thing we possibly could in this country, the only thing we have left is Donald Trump. So we have to put him back on the ballot. So now that's what they're running on. And I don't think it's going to work. Like Joe Biden, this idea of, democracy being at stake, it's tired and it's lazy. And the American people can feel that. And they're tired. I mean, they're tired of being sucker punched by Joe Biden's idea of America. And they just want things to actually go back to normal, which turns out things are a lot more normal with Donald Trump than they are with Joe Biden.
Which is amazing, isn't it? That's quite incredible. That's a true statement you just said. We're talking with Grace Curley from the Grace Curley Show. Dante, go ahead.
Yeah, so Grace, and really for you, Darville, because like I told you, I'm out on the Biden administration, so I didn't watch.
You've checked completely out. Huh?
I'm done. I can't. I just can't. Every day it's a circus, and it's just like I can't with him anymore. But I wanted to gauge both of your thoughts on. We kind of heard this rhetoric a little bit with Hillary in 2016 when she called people that weren't voting for her deplorables. Do you think does this feel more so like a doubling down late as we continue to, as the left continues to maybe move further left or maybe get more unhinged? Like, do you guys think that this is more of that or what?
Grace?
Dante, it's such a good point. And I'm writing a piece, and I'm not giving myself a shameless plug, but it will be in Spectator, I think, tonight.
Awesome.
And I write exactly what you're just saying, which is, originally these were gaffes, these were slip-ups where you said the quiet thing out loud and you accidentally called half the country, or technically, I guess you're calling a fourth of the country, deplorables, and say that, and then you go, well, that's not really what I meant. And you're right. Now they're very open about it. And, Joe Biden, as much as he's been ramping up the rhetoric, this vitriol is trickling down. You saw Kathy Hochul in New York telling Trump and Lee Zeldin to get on a bus and go to Florida. You saw Charlie Crist, who's running against Ron DeSantis in Florida, saying, if you have that hate in your heart, then give Ron DeSantis your vote. I mean, they are very openly now showing how much they despise anyone who disagrees with them. And you're right. It is kind of, it's this strange thing where they're no longer trying to hide it anymore. And it's actually kind of jarring.
Yeah, I think the thing that bothers me about that is we know that, politics, Trump and Biden are not the first people to say inflamed things on speeches, right? They're not the first. So we know that politicians have been doing this for a long time, but they at least used to pretend, even Trump to some degree, pretend like they wanted the vote of people who didn't agree with them, right? Like these politicians today, like you said, like Biden and Kathy Hochul and Charlie Crist, who I personally believe is a complete grifter, but that's another conversation for another day. They're not even pretending to want to serve the entire population of the areas that they're running in. Like statesmen used to say, I am the president, the governor, the mayor, whatever, of the people who voted for me and the people who didn't. Today's crop of politicians aren't even pretending to give a damn about people who are not already in their camps. Are you noticing that as well?
It's so true. And it really is sad because I disagree with Joe Biden. I don't like a lot of his ideas, but the fact that, and I don't think he believes this. I really don't. Like, that part of it kind of makes me sad too. I'd be curious what you guys think about this, but I think he's truly at this point a complete puppet. I don't think he's saying things because it's how he feels. I don't think when he gets out there and he yells, it's because he's really angry. I'm sure they send him out and say, now it's time for yelling voice, and then he uses his yelling voice. But I don't think when he goes home that he's sitting there going, oh, the MAGA people are the greatest threat. I don't think he even believes this. It's spreading this kind of hate. And I know we keep hammering this home, but the irony of the fact that he was this compassionate, ice cream eating grandfather. And really what he's become is this like crazed, screaming old man with red lights behind him and two Marines flanking him. And he just looks like a dictator. And this is from the people who told us everything about him was the antithesis of everything Donald Trump was. And it turns out that is not true at all.
No, the thing that's interesting to me is that a lot of the people, the qualities that people viewed as negative that Donald Trump had, Joe Biden has the same thing. Like it's everything. Oh, you didn't like the way Trump speaks? Do you like this? Like what was it? Lion, dog, face, pony soldier, or whatever he was saying to people. Like he's a jackass. Like he's a jackass. He's never been good old Uncle Joe. He's always been a hateful man. And you know, a lot of times they say the older you get, the more your real personality really, really shines out. So like it's clear, like people voted for Joe Biden to not be Trump for whatever, all the things that they saw that they considered to be negative of Trump. They voted for Biden to be the opposite of that. He's not the opposite. The only thing that he's missing is he has all of Trump's negative qualities and none of the decent policies. Like it's the worst of both worlds.
It's so true. And you know what else I was thinking these last couple of hours, seeing these clips from the speech, it brings me back. And I'm wondering if Jarvio, if you thought this too, and if your co-host noticed, it brings me back to that infamous gaffe he had where he said, if you don't want to vote for me, then you ain't black. It was almost a different version of that. It was him saying, if you don't want to vote for me, then you are an insurrectionist. Or if you don't want to vote for me, then you don't love this country. Or if you don't want to vote for me, then you're a threat. You're a terrorist. You're an extremist. That's the vibe I was getting. Like, it's that black and white to them. Either vote for Joe Biden or you want to divide the country. And it's so insulting because what people used to have to do as politicians was make their case. And sometimes even make a compelling case to get people to vote for them. And now what they're trying to do through this emotional manipulation and this real shaming, like they think that they can guilt trip Americans into voting for them. And I'm sorry, but Americans, I don't think they're that gullible. Like as far as I'm concerned, I get it. They think I'm a terrible person. They think I'm all these bad things. But guess what? I know in my heart that I'm not. So when I go into that voting booth, I don't really care if Joe Biden's going to be disappointed in me.
Hey, Dante, why don't you talk about, since Grace referenced one of your favorite moments from from the president, why don't you talk a little bit about that, the "you ain't black," the infamous "you ain't black" comment?
The last Dixiecrat, right?
Yes, Grace. Dante calls Joe Biden the last Dixiecrat. I think that's very apropos. But go ahead, Dante.
I mean, he's the last one, right? He talked about how he had good relationship. These are his words, not mine. He had good relationships with Strom Thurmond, and he was friends with Robert Byrd, right? They championed him, back in the early 70s, right? He was. What did he say once about how, he was ashamed that Delaware was a proud slave owning state, right? Like this is
Delaware should have been in the Confederacy.
It should have been in the Confederacy, right? So like which is why it's so hard, which is why I've checked out, right? Because it's just so difficult for me to keep up with every single gaffe, right? And then on top of like, all right, it was something new every day with Trump, whether it was real or a media narrative, right? It was something new every single day with that guy. And I'm just like, oh man, at least though with Trump, there was some entertainment value with it, right? So like when Trump would go at somebody and I would feel like, oh man, this isn't great. Like, why are you going at it with Omarosa on Twitter? Or, why? At least, Trump will come back and say, hey, little rocket man, if you want to show off your nukes, I'll show off mine, right? And he's talking about Kim Jong-un, right? That's hilarious, right? It's not ideal, but at least if I'm going to follow this every day, at least I get a little bit of levity involved. With Biden, it's just, right? It's just racist gaffe, angry speeches, confusion because he's confused. I at this point, I'm just like, dude, nothing about this is fun. Nothing about you is fun. But I think, Grace, I think you made a great point about not being concerned about whether Joe Biden is disappointed in you or not, because that's sort of the way they've marketed him in a way, which is, to me, is very interesting. Is like, he's a loving older grandfather. Don't disappoint him by voting the wrong way. Don't you do it. You'll disappoint your granddad, Joe Biden, if you don't vote. And it's just wild to me because, like someone said this week, it was like the rebranding of Joe Biden as someone thoughtful or non-racist is really, I mean, it really shows the propaganda machine at work. Because, like Darvio, like you said, he was never that guy, right? He was even President Obama got the blunt of Joe's racism, right? And even Obama knows, Joe's not really that. He's not really that smart of a guy. I kind of needed him. They needed each other. So to me, it's just Joe is exhausting at this point. It's please, man, just. And guess what, guys? We still got 2 more years to go. So
that's right.
Don't tell me that.
It feels so long already, doesn't it, Grace?
It really does. And Dante, you just hit so many good points about that. I mean, it is exhausting and it is depressing. And, Joe Biden, all he wants to do now is tell us all how disappointed he is in us. And you know what? Something else I'd love to add in here, and I don't think I've ever said this, but I've thought it many times, which is the grandfather comparisons are insulting to all grandfathers across the universe. Because I used to do that comparison on my show where I'd say, oh yeah, he's like a grandfather, blah, blah, blah. And then I would have to say, I just want to say for the record, my grandfathers were both far more with it at their older ages than Joe Biden has ever been. So I just want to clear their names for a minute here, because it doesn't seem fair that he's like America's grandfather. There's a lot of grandfathers out there who are not racist, who are not terrible, who are not boring and confused.
That's a very good point. We're talking with Grace Curley from the Grace Curley Show. And real quick, just kind of switch gears a little bit. Tell people a little bit about your show. You have an amazing show. It's very popular in your neck of the woods. So tell people a little bit about your show.
Sure thing. Thank you so much. The Grace Curley Show is out of, we go out of Boston, but we're all over really New England. It's a conservative talk show from 12 to 3. You can at gracecurleyshow.com, or you can go on any of the apps like iHeart, Spotify. It's everywhere in podcast form. But we do a lot of conservative talk, and we try to do what you guys are doing right now, which is just we try to have fun with it. We really do. We keep it light. I guess sometimes the biggest complaint I get from people is, you're laughing so much, you're having so much fun, this stuff is serious. And I'm like, listen, it is serious, but if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry. Like, I have to find a little light in this.
Right.
And the truth is that you have to take politics. You can't get too high and you can't get too low. You got to take it every day and just find the little giggles that you can. And that's what we do in the show. And, I will say there's plenty of things to talk about nowadays. And we hit everything. Sometimes when I started in radio a million years ago in college, I was very big into pop culture and celebrities. So every once in a while, I'll work that in and I'll do something really fluffy and kind of ridiculous. And that's, we'll do like a royal update. It drives the listeners crazy. Everybody yells at me and they say, we don't want to hear about Meghan Markle. We don't want to hear about Prince Harry. And I play it anyway. So you never know what you're going to get, but it's always a good time.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I've noticed from 2 times that I've been on your show and just from listening to your show in general, one of the things that I really like about it is when you do approach political topics, like you're very smart and thoughtful, and that's a breath of fresh air, because it's not you don't pull punches, but you're not out there purposely trying to just be a bomb thrower for the sake of being a bomb thrower. And you're it's just you learn something, sometimes listening to your show. And I always come back, leave from listening to your show like, wow, I didn't know that, or that was a different perspective on this. It's just really thoughtful, and you're really smart. Like, you're one of the smartest people, doing radio right now, and especially in a space where it's easy to just go out and just speak bumper stickers.
Yeah, thank you, Darby. That means so much to me. And I think, if I'm being totally honest, sometimes the stuff I'm talking about and the times that you've been on my show, we've hit on a few of these topics, but, whether it be racism or, sometimes it's the soft bigotry of low expectations that we're talking about with Joe Biden and other people, or, sometimes it's a really complex issue. And I'm a 30-year-old girl from Boston, and there's plenty of things I don't know. And I've kind of always tried to approach it in a way of, I remember I said to an editor once, I said, sometimes I get imposter syndrome. Like, I feel like I'm with all these people who are so smart and I'm trying to know everything. And he said, the reason people like you is because you don't know everything, and you're kind of okay with that. So when I bring on guests like yourself, I've had the honor of interviewing a lot of great people. I kind of just let them take the mic, because if I'm having you on for something, I think you know a lot about it. And I learn a lot from my guests, and I love having people on the show. And I learn a lot from my callers. I mean, they're some of the smartest people out there, and they're good people, and they work hard. And so I've just been blessed to have a lot of different voices on the show, and they've helped me kind of create what it is today.
Absolutely. So you're doing a conservative show, and it's a pretty big one in Boston and in New England. What is that like, obviously, being in a blue area like that and being such a prominent, conservative host out there?
Well, the bright side is that no one else is going near this material in Boston. I mean, we have like a treasure trove of material that no one's really touching. And you'd be shocked how many conservatives there are. I mean, obviously, it's still a deep blue state. I'm not denying that. But the listenership, it's almost like we're all part of this secret club, and sometimes they'll go somewhere and someone will, every once in a while, someone will recognize me. It's very rare. I'm not trying to be like Jennifer Aniston up in here or anything like that. But every once in a while, someone will recognize me, and you can tell that people love having like-minded or, people who they feel less crazy. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest compliment I get from people is if they call me and they say, listening to you on my lunch break makes me feel like I'm not losing my mind. Because if I can do that for people just for a few hours a day, then it's, in my mind, it's a job well done.
Absolutely. Grace Curley, let everybody know once again how to listen to the show, and let them know how to follow you on social media and all that good stuff.
They can listen to the show at gracecurleyshow.com or wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple. Just go to Howie Carr Radio Network, and you'll find my show and Howie Show under the same branch of that option. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at G_Curley, and I write for The Spectator and also for the Boston Herald. So if you want to read any of my work, you can check it out there.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. We definitely are going to have to do this again for sure.
Darby, I want to thank you so much, and Dante, the whole crew. You guys are so great. And I hope to have you on my show again soon, because I really mean it when I say you are one of those guests who, after I have you on, the phone lines light up. Everybody calls in. It is like always an A+. So I'm really honored.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, just let me know and we'll make it happen.